Welcome back to the Saints and Alumni Show right here on WBCR 88.3 The Saint. I'm your host this week, Brandon Murphy, class of 2017 from the Alumni Engagement Office. And this week, I'm joined by Monica Acker from the class of 2004 and author of Brave Like a Mom, a story of a mother and daughter exploring together what it means to be strong, brave, and fierce while living with a chronic illness. A reminder to everyone listening to us today on WBCR 88.3 The Saint that there are multiple ways that you can listen and watch the podcast, a bi-weekly show highlighting our Siena Saints. You can listen on Apple and Spotify, iHeartRadio, and you can also subscribe to the Siena Alumni YouTube channel to check out the complete selection of shows. But Monica, officially welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time today to sit down with us. How's everything going for you?
It's great. Thank you so much for having me here, Brandon. I'm just so excited to get to chat with you and talk to the Siena community.
It was so great because you had first reached out to the communications office probably about 6 months ago about the book that you had published, Brave Like a Mom. And then they sent it over to the alumni office and we jumped on it instantly to kind of showcase you in the magazine and here on the podcast today. But before we kind of get to that process of writing the book, what the book is about, I want the listeners to kind of understand who you are and your Siena experience and how that has shaped your life through the years. So we're going to take the clocks back a little bit to a senior in high school, and you're looking at colleges, and Siena pops up on the radar. Can you kind of go through the process of why you chose Siena, what you wanted in a college, and ultimately why you became a Siena Saint for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it's like 20 something years ago, but it's still clear as day, right? I can still remember, I growing up, I had this dream that I was going to go to BC. I had a pair of BC sweatpants I got as a hand-me-down, and that was it. And then I went for a visit and I was underwhelmed because it was raining and no one was smiling. And it didn't seem like a place I wanted to spend my time. I didn't feel a sense of community. And then just cut to Siena. And of course, my tour was like one of those beautiful spring days. Like everyone's out on like what we used to call the Siena Beach, right? Like when they're getting the sun right in front of Saracen. And then there were a lot of smiles. There was a lot of like this sense of community, and people were coming up to each other and greeting each other. And that positivity was what drew me in. And I mean, Siena had a lot to offer in terms of academics, and I knew what kind, I didn't want to be in a city, different things like that. But ultimately it was a feeling of home the minute I stepped on campus.
That's what's so great about Siena is, I had a little bit of a different experience because I already had a brother here at Siena. So I would come, when he was a freshman and sophomore, at a family weekend, a siblings weekend, and get that sense of community and family. But for people like you who don't quite have that Siena connection quite yet, you get on campus, either it being in a visit or you get on campus on freshman moving day and you feel like you're home. There's a lot of nerves and a lot of excitement and nervous energy, but there's something magical about Siena that you get here on freshman moving day and that first semester, and you just know that you belong. Can you talk a little bit about adjusting to college, where you lived, and some of those experiences you had your freshman year?
Yeah, I'm super curious because I lived in Ryan Hall and particularly the Winnie the Pooh wing. And I'm sure that doesn't exist anymore, but like, I'd love to know if it still does. So listeners, if it does exist, let me know. But it was like the only themed wing in all of Ryan Hall. And we had murals of Winnie the Pooh and Tigger all over.
I love that.
And I had an interesting move-in experience. I was randomly assigned a sophomore roommate. So that first night I was on my own, which was weird to be in a dorm room for the first time alone. But I immediately I felt like I had to then put myself out there and reach out to other people. So I, caught dinner with a couple of people. And then the next day I met my roommate and the two sophomores across the hall, and that was it. We were like friends for life.
It's crazy. I obviously lived with my twin Andy, but the two people living next door, it was instant connection. We were like best friends. We did everything together, and we kind of roomed in similar halls and townhouses our 4 years at Siena. And we're going to dive into those different types of experiences, the in-classroom experiences and the out-of-classroom experiences that kind of shape that Siena experience. And in the role that I have, I'm very lucky that I get to interview people like you and be out on the road and meeting people. And a lot of the times people go, the Siena experience impacted me because I decided to join this, or I decided to be part of this club or take this class. And for you, it was theater and joining that and being part of that production. Can you share a little bit behind why you wanted to be in that theater club, how that happened, and those experiences that came with it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's like a helping hand, right? That you get pushed and prodded in the direction that ultimately you needed to go. I thought I was going to be there for education, but over the summer, right, when you signed up to come and do like an overnight and then register for classes, I can't remember what that's called anymore. But I was like the last weekend. So when I showed up, a lot of the core classes that were not 8:30 in the morning were taken, and I was randomly assigned an advisor in the creative arts department. And they were like, well, it looks like you enjoyed creative arts in high school. How about taking like theater and drawing? And that kind of pushed me in that direction. First theater class was amazing, and I heard there were jobs in the theater. So then I took on a role as a student, building sets for the theater. So it just like one thing, it was dominoes of like one thing led to another, led to another. I was in a couple of productions, and it really became, like that small little like family within the greater Siena community.
And for those listening today, Monica, in the beginning of her answer, she was talking about those preview days that we have at Siena. And we bring all of the students here on campus and kind of give them a taste of that Siena life before the official move-in day. And they can kind of acclimate themselves to Siena just a little bit and do things like registering for classes, checking out the rooms, where could I fit different things, and kind of what classes can I take. And you're highlighting the theater itself. And I want to paint the picture a little bit now of how you became an author and that skill set and that passion. Was there anything specific about being in theater or just in that creative arts atmosphere that kind of was the cornerstone of you becoming an author and that creative side to your life?
What I feel like the theater background really brought to my writing is I never thought of myself as a writer. I had great feedback, throughout school that my writing was good, but I wasn't an English major, which is what I thought you needed to be. But when I started writing, I found that I had an excellent grasp of how to create characters and how to develop something called voice, which is hard to put your finger on, but it's kind of like the world's feeling that you're creating in a book. And I 100% give credit to my theater background and understanding character development and things like that.
And we talked about the roommates and how roommates and friends along the journey of Siena can help shape that experience. But for you, you also had some Siena community members help shape your Siena experience. And that's another thing that we hear on the road all the time is, hey, so-and-so started working at Siena. This professor, this fry was so impactful to my Siena experience. And for you, that was Brother Gary, who was the assistant professor of creative arts and directed campus theater productions, along with Dr. Treddy Kuhel, who was the professor of creative arts. And you began a relationship with both of them. Can you share a little bit about what they meant to your Siena experience to the listeners today?
Brother Gary used to drive me crazy, but he pushed me to be better. I think I probably equally drove him crazy when he was directing me. I had this like very, very quiet voice, and they were like, please project. So it was probably mutual craziness, but he pushed me to be better. He pushed me to really, think deeper, and to perform stronger. And Dr. Trudy Kuhil she was such a hoot. The first time I met her, she sort of insulted me, but it was like a compliment.
In the Siena way.
Yeah, like it was a compliment. It was like a little backhanded compliment. But she by the end of my time there, she made me feel like I could accomplish anything, and just believed in me as a person and as a creator.
And we got just about 2 minutes left today, and we're beginning to paint this picture more clearer for the audience today about the creative experiences and the creative passion that you have. And then outside of that writing, you also have this profession in childhood education as well. Can you share with the listeners today a little bit about your path after Siena and how that ties in with becoming an author for children's books?
So straight after graduation from Siena, I went right into a graduate program for childhood education that actually worked hand in hand with a school that I was working at. So I got right into the classroom as well. And I've always had a passion for working with children and helping them find their way, and they're helping them develop skills, and it's just something that I've always loved. And it just, with picture books, it goes hand in hand. I didn't realize that was the path I was taking until all of a sudden it revealed itself. But the combination of the theater background and the childhood education just marries perfectly, and knowing how to write for that audience.
And I'm really excited to get into the second segment. And I'm so happy that you hinted at the picture book side of writing, because I have a few questions for you. And I'm sure our listeners are kind of intrigued about writing and then adding the visual aspect to that book. And then also the deeper meaning behind the book and the story behind that as well. So everybody listening, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here to talk about Brave Like a Mom with Monica Acker. Welcome back to the Saints and Alumni Show right here on WBCO 88.3 The Saint. I'm your host this week, Brandon Murphy, class of 2017 from the Alumni Engagement Office. And this week I am joined by Monica Acker from the class of 2004 and author of Brave Like a Mom, a story of a mother and daughter exploring together what it means to be strong, brave, and fierce while living with a chronic illness. And Monica, after college, everyone continues to grow their passions and even explore new passions. And for you, we talked about it a little bit in the first segment about exploring your passions for creativity and storytelling. And like all of us, you're refining your skills through the years, and ultimately you end up attending this children's book writing panel and learning about that process. Can you share with the audience today kind of big picture to begin with, pursuing writing and becoming an author once you attended that panel?
Yeah, I saw an advertisement at our local bookstore that said, "So you want to be a children's book writer?" And I was like, huh, I think I do. We just talked about in the last segment about education. And I used to start a lot of my lessons for the little ones with a book, but I couldn't always find the right book. And I'd always go, yeah, someone needs to write that. And I never really thought that someone was me. And then I saw this and I thought, maybe it is me. And I attended it. And one of my light bulb moments, I previously said I didn't think of myself as a writer. I wasn't an English major. One of the guys on the panel, his name is Josh Funk, and has 18 plus children's picture books out. He's a software engineer. And I was like, well, just boom. If a software engineer isn't a writer, he didn't go to school for English either. If he could do this, why can't I? And that was the beginning. And the good thing is I didn't know what I didn't know, because I was like
learning along the way.
Yeah, because in some ways, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I don't know if I would have taken that risk. But I've enjoyed every step of the process, and I think that's the key, is to just enjoy it.
And when somebody wants to become a writer, there also has to be something that is going to make them passionate about writing, or some life experience that is driving them to share a specific story. And for you, when you began that writing process, you had written a few short pieces here and there, but then your sister-in-law was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and you're writing every day through this process and through this journey with your family. And in the book, you specifically don't detail out what that chronic illness is, because there's that goal and lesson behind the book of itself, and the overall discussion of chronic illness with family members. Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration and the goal behind Brave Like a Mom?
My sister-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I needed to write this for me. I was writing every day I was writing little things and just cutesy. This I had to write for me and for her. And I never had any intention of it going to be published and getting out in the world. it was a cathartic exercise. And when she got worse and when she passed, it became something for me to work on and get through my emotions. And I shared it with a couple of people, and they said, you really need to share this because other people are going through these things and they need to know that you're not saying it's going to be okay, but you're saying that you are brave, that you already have what you need to handle it. And that was the inspiration behind it. That's why I needed to write it and needed to get it published and out there in the world.
And we're gonna get into the whole writing process itself and getting it published and all of those details. But the other part that I found fascinating when preparing for the interview today is that you wrote the book, but then you had an illustrator, Perrin Kim, draw the visual elements to the story. But she's living in Germany and you're living in Massachusetts. So what was specifically that process like when you're working with somebody so closely with such a story that is so close to you, but that person's not with you on a day-to-day basis? Can you share what that process was like and how you maybe found her and that collaboration?
This is always a part that blows people's minds, that often, not always, but often the writer and the illustrator of a traditionally published book. It would be different if I self-published, have like zero contact. So, like everyone's like, how does that happen? Like, how do they even know what you're thinking and what the visuals will look like? And they don't always, right? So I might see an image and go, oh, that's not what I was thinking, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means like, oh, that's like a different take on what I saw in my mind, but it still tells the story and it's telling it beautifully. Right. So, sometimes the illustrator also brings something to the story that you didn't know, like you didn't picture at all, but it becomes like your new favorite thing. So she added this little stuffed lion. I didn't mention that there was going to be a little stuffed animal that was going to be in the book the whole time, but it's the perfect analogy of bravery, right? You see a lion, you think brave, and the little girl has that little lion with her throughout the whole book, and it just shows that she's always been brave. And she's added that.
I love when you bring something like that up about the symbolism of an object or a person or something that's happening throughout the story. And I want to talk a little bit about how that story is structured. So can you just kind of share briefly on, does the book go in chronological order? Are there, flashbacks? Kind of how is this book structured? And how did it become published? And what was that process like?
Yeah, the structure goes, it's kind of like healthy moments and then the everyday moments, and then the moments where mom is battling an illness. And it was important to me to show both because, I felt like my sister-in-law, and I remember like when I was a kid, my mom had gone through some stuff. They aren't the illness, right? Like even though my sister-in-law was battling cancer, she was there for the birthday parties. Like she was there for the everyday awesomeness too. And it just like not letting that illness own every moment was really important to me. And then I'm sorry, what was the second part?
What was the process for you like to get the book published? Because you wrote it and then you put it down and then you picked it back up again after, I believe, the passing of your sister-in-law and got it published. So what was that like to kind of go through that business side of things and to actually get that hard copy once it was published?
Yeah, I love that you said the business side of things because it does come down to the fact that selling books is a business. And as much as this is a heartfelt story, the publisher needed to feel like they were going to make money, is what it comes down to. So the whole process, there's a lot of in publishing, there's a lot of hearing no, not right now, not the right fit, no thank you, nice no's, but but there's a lot of no's throughout the process. But it all leads to getting it into the right hands. And I landed with a publisher, Beaming Books, and they are absolutely the right hands for this book. And that's then when it gets to the illustrator. So it doesn't show up to them with pictures, right? So yeah.
There's that whole process. And That's just about a year ago now, that book was published. And, we talk about, okay, you got the business side of things, but we have this story that we want people to read and to share with their family members. So a year later, as you reflect upon the writing process and this past year, what's it been like for you? Where can people find the book? And have you had like any book talks or anything where people have come up to you and say, hey, this has really helped my family. This has really helped my friend through this journey?
Yeah, that's the most magical thing is when someone I've gotten, emails out of the blue from someone who's found me on my website and just wanted to let me know how important the book was for them. There was a mom who had breast cancer who reached out to me. I was at a local fair recently and just like at an author's table, and a family came over and they were talking to me a little bit. They found the book in the library. And the mom, as they were walking away, turned back and she said, my brother-in-law is fighting pancreatic cancer and your book really helped us. So anytime I get goosebumps, anytime I hear from someone that this book has impacted their lives and it's helped them, I can't ask for anything more.
And you talked about people just casually walking through the bookstore and coming across your book. But for somebody that's listening today, and they want to immediately go online and look for this book, do you have a website? Is it on Amazon? How could they find this if they're not at a bookstore?
Yeah, so it should be available. It's even in Target, like wherever books are sold. Mostly, you're gonna find online because they like all bookstores just can't carry all the books. But you can go to Amazon, Target. You can ask any indie bookstore if they don't have it. You can ask them to order it for you, and it'll be there in a couple of days. Might not be as fast as Prime, but pretty fast. And then I do have a website. It's just monicaacker.com.
And to wrap up today, we got just about a minute and a half left. For anybody that's listening today, or anybody that I come across in the next year at alumni events that may be reading it in the Siena magazine, and they want to become an author, or maybe they're battling something with their family and a chronic illness, what is some advice that you would give to a future author, or just some general advice that you would give to anybody battling a chronic illness?
Well, for future authors, I actually was reminded recently is to create because you love creating. There's so many things that you can't control. Like you can't control if it's going to sell to a publisher or to a magazine, but you can control if you're getting joy out of it. And there's a woman on Twitter who says your art is the prize, and that's exactly what it is. Like if you've created something, then you've like look what you did. Like you made something out of nothing, right? Like blank page becomes a story. And then for families who are dealing with chronic illness, I just, man, I'm here for you, and you are brave and you are strong, and you will get through it.
Well, Monica, I think that's a great way to end the episode today, recognizing that everybody is brave and that they're strong. And I appreciate you doing that as well today, and kind of opening up on your family story and the writing process as well. And overall, just taking the time to speak with the Siena community. So thank you for that. And to everybody today, thank you for listening right here on WBCR 88.3 The Saint. We'll see you next time for the Saints and Alumni Show.